hiring someone with prior fractional experience is a huge benefit when you're hiring fractional, because you have someone that knows the nuances of doing fractional work versus hiring someone that has never done it before.
Welcome to the Fractional Edge podcast, the ultimate podcast where we unlock the power of workforce planning and discuss the rapidly growing fractional executive staffing strategies to supercharge your business.
Meet your hosts, Carol Fraser, a workforce planning expert, fractional chief human resources officer, and founder of C4 Talent.
And Jason Hewitt, the sensei of marketing, fractional chief marketing officer, and founder of Fifth Degree Marketing.
We'll bring you insights from seasoned pros, inspiring success stories, and actionable strategies to optimize your valued workforce.
Don't miss this chance to upgrade your business with top industry leaders in today's competitive landscape. So tune in and learn how to unleash your competitive edge. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are listening from. My name is Carol Fraser, and you are at the Fractional Edge podcast. We highlight fractional executives and their magic on how they can better help you, the small and medium-sized business owner, reach your goals. Remember, it's for a fraction of the cost. You get really experienced executives who can get stuff done way faster, way better, and help you get the competitive edge that you need. I have today with me Taylor, and Taylor has two hats he's going to be wearing today. The first is as the CEO of a very important website for all of the small business owners, as well as fractional executives, and how we marry the two of them together. And the other is as a fractional chief product officer. Taylor, introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carol. I appreciate it. I am Taylor. I am both the founder of Fractional Jobs, which is the job board for fractional leaders, of course, and the companies that are looking to reach and recruit them. But then I'm also a fractional head of product, or a fractional CPO. I've been head of product for about a year now, working in a fractional capacity. And my focus area is on early stage startups. And actually, even more specifically, I tend to work with non-technical founders of early stage startups. So I think folks with like deep domain expertise in a particular function area that may not have a ton of experience building software and bringing like a software product to life. And that's kind of my sweet spot. I do wear both hats. I launched Fractional Jobs just a few months ago. So at the moment I am quite focused on that, but yeah, I do a bunch of things.
Now, it's interesting, as a chief product officer, fractionaljobs.io is a product. Mm-hmm. And so you're kind of doing both. What is the why behind fractionaljobs.io?
Sure. So let me rewind a bit about, my own background. So I of course started my career in product as a PM for about 10 years. And then I started my first company in 2020. It was a venture-backed company in the consumer social space. And I ended up selling it in 2023. And then from there, the question for me was like, what do I do next? It was not, by no means was it an exit that I'm not on a beach, in Europe right now. And so, it's the thinking next is like, what do I want to do next? And what really spoke to me most was an opportunity to support founders using my own expertise, what I'm best at, which is product. And so that is how I fell into being a fractional head of product, a fractional CPO. And in starting that work, very quickly realized two things. Number one, I absolutely loved it. It was for so many reasons. It felt like such a breath of fresh air doing, the work that the craft, if you will. But then, perhaps more importantly or more relevant to your question, I also discovered, as every fractional has discovered, is that it can be quite challenging actually to find clients to work with. And if you are someone that has a large enough personal and professional network to be able to build your initial practice off of just your own personal connections, then that is great. And you might have, great chances at success as a fractional leader. Luckily enough for me, I think I do have a pretty sizable network. And so I was able to build a practice quite quickly. But I know so many talented people in different function areas that are incredible at their craft. but may not have, weren't a former CEO, for example, within the venture community, may not have, a huge network. And what I saw was that at least at present, there really is no chance for them to break into the fractional world without, that network. And so that's the problem that I wanted to solve. And I said to myself, like, how can I really accelerate the fractional movement? And the biggest opportunity I saw was creating the job board for fractional talent. And so that is what I ended up doing. So, yeah.
So the why is really to not only help the fractional executive get their magic out there, but it's also a place for the companies to be able to come and kind of as a marketplace, see what's out there as far as the talent. Is that fair?
That's exactly correct. And what I'm learning now, I guess it was relatively new learning or something that I didn't realize, is just how much education I think is required to get companies aligned with and sort of aware of, aligned with sort of how to hire fractional. I released what I call a playbook just this past week. It was has the most views of any playbook I've written. And it's called How to Hire a Fractional Leader, geared at companies. And this is like part of my realization that there is a lot of opportunity for educating companies on how to approach fractional hiring, because there are a lot of nuances compared to hiring a full-time employee that I think are misunderstood and are preventing, these two sides of the marketplace from coming together seamlessly.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that you said, which I think our audience really needs to kind of I don't think they probably caught the one thing that I put my little notes down to, which is fractional executives are some of the most happy and engaged executives because they are only focusing on the magic that they want to focus on, and they're not being bogged down with things that really didn't bring both value to them or value to the companies that they were working for. And when small and medium-sized businesses think about this fractional, the idea is that you're already getting somebody who's uber engaged, right? They're uber engaged and they're knowledgeable. It's like you hope to get sometimes an engaged employee, but 9 times out of 10, you got to train them. Whereas with a fractional executive, you're not training them, but you're already getting somebody who's like, oh my God, you hired me just for my magic and you're going to actually let me do what I do best. Hello. Yeah. It's like a win-win. And you said that little piece of, I'm so happy to be a fractional. I get so much joy out of it. I was like, I bet you these people don't realize that.
I've actually never thought about it in that way. And I think that's really true. Like someone who's doing fractional work successfully, it's an opt-in kind of situation where we are intentionally saying this is the kind of work that we want to do, and that's how we're approaching it. And and we're doing it for good reasons. Like we do think it's a better way of working, for at least for us, and it serves our needs, and that does create better, more happy, more engaged employees. And it also dispels a common myth of hiring fractional that I'm going to hire someone that's like, one thing I hear, because I talk to companies now, basically every day on hiring fractional. And one of the things I hear constantly is like, oh, come on. Like, how can I hire someone 10 hours a week? They have to be all in on my company. They have to be fully focused. Like, how could you possibly do X, Y, Z on, part-time? That makes no sense. You're not going to live and breathe the ethos of my company that I built with my bare hand. That whole framing. And it's so, silly, really. So yeah.
I mean, look, even the CEOs that you're talking to, though they are building it with their bare hands, there are certain parts of their business that they don't want to do. I mean, let's face it. I don't want to do my accounting. I want somebody else to do it. And if you can find people who are like, but I love doing that, where is the loss? Why is that not just a win-win? So when you, for the fractionaljobs.io, how does it work? Like, how do companies sign up, or how do fractionals sign up? Yeah.
One thing I want to say off the bat is there is no sign-ups required, which is great, just like way less friction involved. So I'll talk about it from both sides. So on the fractional side, you come to fractionaljobs.io, you simply just enter your email address. That's literally it. And then you are part of the network. Nice. You begin to get email alerts based on your job function of the jobs that we have that might be available to you. We are also doing we're more high touch than just a typical job board. And so we are also, when we work with a company, we'll be doing like targeted outreach to our network, personalized outreach that says, hey, we have this company here, like you perhaps didn't see the newsletter because not everyone reads newsletters, like, but we think you might actually be a great fit for this role. Like, are you interested? And so that's at least part of how it works on the fractional side, at least the sign up component to it. And on the company side, if you come to fractionaljobs.io, there's a few ways to engage with us. One is simply just reaching out to me. I mean, I have companies, I'll book meetings with companies that are just like interested in the idea of hiring fractional, that want to learn more, and kind of talking them through it. There's also, you can post a job directly on the Fractional Jobs website just by clicking the post a job button, and that's it. And then it gets syndicated out to our whole network. So there's a few easy ways to engage. It's a very, like, I made clear that like there's no like complicated sign up process as a fractional. You don't have to build, your own profile like LinkedIn, and on the company side, it's very much like you're engaging with me directly. And for example, like when we have a job and fractionals see the job and they do what's called, we have like a request an intro button.
Okay.
And a fractional can come and say like, hey, this job looks good to me. I'd love to request an intro to the CEO or to the hirer. And then I'll take those intro requests and I'll batch them up and I'll send them to the hirer, typically the founder. And then the founder will say, okay, great. Like, I love this one, and this one. I'd love to talk to them. If you can please make introductions. And that's kind of like, that's how it works. So
you're a matchmaker in many respects.
I am a professional matchmaker, I suppose. Yeah. And it's not even like no, definitely not. I mean, kind of reflecting on this quite a bit recently, my career has been, I've been very much a generalist across a number of different industries. Like my product career was I won't even name them all, but like a lot of different industries. And then I started a company, which was an online poker app for friends, which is, consumer social and gaming play. And now I'm in the HR recruiting world and, did not expect to be a quote unquote matchmaker. But that is the role that I'm playing. And it's quite enjoyable in a lot of ways. I mean, as I'm sure there are some, elements of the recruiting world and the HR that are like, are more grunt work style stuff, yes. But, it's been really fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of the things that while it's within my breadth and depth of scope that I can do, I would much prefer somebody else do recruiting, right? I think every person at some point in their HR career has done recruiting, but it is a specific skill and not everyone wants to lean into that one.
Yeah.
Sometimes we want to lean into a different portion of the 26 separate disciplines of human resources.
Totally.
So I'm curious, this question came up recently in just conversation, and given kind of what your website is doing and how you're doing the matchmaking, I felt like maybe, and that's why I had to look it up, maybe it would fit here. How do people gauge the quality of the fractional talent?
I have a few thoughts on this.
Okay.
Maybe first a clarifying question. Are we talking about like how might a company look at a fractional profile and sort of assess the fit for their company? Is that sort of the essence of the question?
I would say yes. And with this movement that is happening right now, the opportunity to hire a fractional executive is really broad. So there are people who have come out of corporate with 5 or 10 years of experience and now have decided to go fractional. And then you have the ones that have 25, 30 years of experience and are going fractional. So it's not to say that the person with 10 years is any less impactful or valuable than the 30-year, but it's as we all know, it's about the vetting process and really doing that. What is your pain point to find where you can get the best quality? And I'm just curious how that works with a job board. Totally just curious. I mean, this is so new.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'll tell you a couple of things, like what I'm sort of seeing happen naturally, including some mistakes that I see, being made, but then also how I think in theory, companies should be approaching this question. I think, let me start with the theory first. I think that companies when they're looking at hiring fractional and they're trying to evaluate like the type of need that they have, what kind of fractional are they looking for. You're right. Like there are a lot of fractionals, especially now, a lot of fractionals across a lot of different areas. And so like, and not all fractionals are alike. Like a fractional CMO, is not is not the same as every other fractional CMO, of course. I think there are 4 criteria. The first is function area. The second is kind of like the kind of level of involvement you want, like we'll call it time commitment, perhaps. The seniority that you're looking for, and then the background or experiences that you're looking for. So the function area is pretty straightforward. It's like, am I looking for like someone to do like marketing type work or HR type work or product type work or engineering type work, what have you. I think that's pretty straightforward. Yeah. Then you have like what kind of level of involvement are you looking for? Are you looking for someone to be super hands-on, managing a team and doing execution work and interacting with the rest of the leadership team? That implies a certain level of involvement, maybe like half time even. Or maybe you as a founder or CEO are looking for more just like strategic guidance. Like I'm looking for someone to come in and has the capacity to spend 2 hours a week with me on like a meeting, a synchronous meeting a week, and then, some communications, reviewing some documents, et cetera, kind of guiding me from like a 30,000 foot view, if you will. And that implies very different, type of fractional as well. So that's kind of like the time commitment. Then there's seniority. I think this is an interesting one, especially because you mentioned like there are a lot of fractionals entering the fractional world that are more like the 10-year experience realm as opposed to like 25 years of experience. Like, so like we're talking, and that's me, by the way, too. Like I have about 15 years of work experience. And so seniority is like, am I looking for a chief revenue officer that, has 20 years of sales leadership experience, that has seen it all before, to come into my organization? Very, very different from hiring like a director of sales that has, maybe much more like recent hands-on experience versus someone that, a 20-year plus CRO veteran is an incredible asset to have, right? But they're probably not the best fit if you're have a very brand new sales team, maybe, a couple of folks, or maybe, you're just getting the motion started and you're trying to figure out, is cold outreach the right strategy, or is like an inbound sales approach the right, those kinds of stuff. I think like, maybe going for a director of sales might be a better fit in those kind of environment. And so sort of like that level of seniority, I think is very important to understand what your needs are. And then the last criteria is like the specific set of background and experiences that you're looking for. And this is like a really interesting one, because as one of the pieces of value that fractionals provide is that we come from all different types of backgrounds and niches, et cetera. And like we are often quite specialized in the work that we bring, or that the work that we want to bring. And so I'll give you a couple examples. Like the background is like you can go out, instead of saying like, I want to go out and hire like a fractional CMO or like a fractional CTO, you can just get way, way, way more specific with your need and still find people that are going to fit that need. So for example, like you could be looking for like a functional expert. This is someone that's like I am a fractional B2B demand gen leader, right? Very specific type of marketing role. Or you may be looking for like an industry expert. That's like, I am a climate tech focused fractional CPO. Or a stage expert. This is me, by the way, a stage expert. But like I am an early stage startup engineering leader, a CTO, right? And so that's like, anyway, this is a long answer to your question.
Good.
Those are like a few vectors by which to evaluate and like narrow in on the right kind of fractional. And then the last point I'll make is like some of the mistakes I'm seeing companies make is I think this is probably the case in the full-time recruiting world as well, but I think they're way overvaluing like pedigree of prior employers. Like, when you scan a resume quickly, you're looking for those big names that stand out to you, right? And it's just like, I see people like companies like passing up on fractional talent that I know are incredibly talented, but like they didn't work at Meta or Google, that kind of stuff. It's so silly to me. But especially like, hiring someone with prior fractional experience is a huge benefit when you're hiring fractional, because you have someone that knows the nuances of doing fractional work versus hiring someone that has never done it before. And so I think that's also an opportunity that's being missed by companies. They're hiring fractional people I want more people to be doing fractional work. I want, as many as possible, but, as a company, you should perhaps place some weight on someone that has, let's say, 2 years of fractional work experience already. That is because you are learning things that you can just get up to speed more quickly. There's a lot of like some small things that just make it smoother, I suppose.
That's just like, I mean, if you think about it, what you've just been given, what we've given our audience is kind of a way to, if you are thinking about hiring a fractional, now you've got a little bit more insight, because I bet you know, anybody who's hiring fractionals are kind of like, how do I gauge? I mean, yeah, this person came from a pedigreed place, if you will. I always, as an HR person with several dozen years under her, I look at that and go, but that also means while a great pedigree and while it's really a well established and has good processes and people really understand kind of how something goes from A to B to C, their roles are way more focused. And so because I don't need to have a broad role if I'm working for a large company, there's thousands of other people. So my focus is really more hyper-focused. And a fractional can, if I'm a fractional from a pedigree, I can see it from two ways. One, if you need my hyper-focused expertise, that's why I'm good for a fractional. Or two, if you want me to leverage all of the process that I had to learn how to use at one of these other companies, then that's the reason why you hire me. But if you're a small or medium-sized business owner who needs, like you, more of a generalist and someone who knows what it means to, whether you were a consultant or a prior fractional, those skills of being able to walk in and have a 2-hour conversation and be able to already put a full priority list together, that's a skill in and of itself.
Yeah.
And
totally.
Sometimes those pedigrees wouldn't really have that because it's a decision by committee, right?
Yeah,
So
totally. Yeah.
you wouldn't really be in that agile kind of environment of, oh my gosh, I see 7 things wrong. Here's where I believe we should be prioritizing. And that was just the first hour we were talking. So that's just a different skill set in and of itself. So hopefully our listeners are like, okay, so if I do want somebody who has a hyper focus because they worked at a Meta or a Google, and that's exactly what I need, that's the kind of fractional I need. Or I want somebody who is from that department in those pedigrees because I want to basically steal all that process or see what works in my company, then cool, you can go ahead and look at that. But if you want somebody who's like, yeah, I could probably pull from those, but I also have all of these other ones that I could potentially pull from, that's a different kind of fractional.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I loved that question when somebody gave it to me, and I was like, let's keep that question rolling because I think more people need to hear the answer. So let's pivot a little bit because you brought it up just a little bit around you as a chief product officer. So talk to us a little bit about kind of what you've been doing in that realm. Who is your client that really can see the magic happen? All of that good stuff.
Yeah. So, like I said, I've been in this fractional head of product role for about a year now. My specialty, my focus, my niche, if you will, is focusing on early stage tech startups, and then particularly non-technical founders. It's funny because like that last bit, the non-technical founder bit, I didn't set out to, like, it wasn't like intentional ahead of time or before I started, but I began to learn quite quickly that is where my practice took me. And then in hindsight, it makes a lot of sense because I come into product. I came in from a non-technical background and I've slowly learned to code and got a lot more technical over the years, but I still have a lot of empathy for those that, are not as familiar with software. And so, so now my brand, my niche, if you will, is early stage startups. We're working directly with non-technical founders, and what I say is to build A+ products. And really, what I spend most of my time doing within my own practice is very early stage, 0 to 1 type stuff. And so a client of mine that I've been working with for quite a while now is a founder. We started together when it was just an idea in his head. It's still in stealth mode, so I can't say too much, but it's in the sports and entertainment space around fan engagement. And So literally started with an idea in his head, and he comes from like I want to like share because I want to give context, but then I don't want to like get derailed. But it's sort of like an NFT type play, but without the financial component of it. So we started out by just pulling the idea out of his head, putting it onto paper, and then bringing it through like a design process and the user research process up until a point where we now have a fully fledged like business plan and pitch. And the next step is pitching sports stadiums. And next month we have a meeting with the NHL, and it's incredible. And I'm so excited about it. And like it's just so cool to reflect back on like where we first started. So that's like a really, I think, quintessential example of where I can be super valuable is very, very early stage, like 0 to 1 type software development, and really just product thinking in general.
Yeah.
And then also like, you know, in his case, working a lot with him and the founder to sort of like shape not just like the software, but just the entire product and even the business in some cases. Because I was the CEO for a few years of a venture-backed company. Like I'm pretty well-rounded in that sense. And so, like I said, I'm very much a generalist. And so the relationship has worked out very, very well is the point. And we're super excited about what's coming next.
You did develop your own business and you ended up having an exit. So you have a real understanding of a founder's perspective. Mm-hmm. And when pain points tend to pop up their ugly heads. Now, I don't know how long ago you were your own, founder of your own company. Did you ever leverage any fractional executives to help you move that organization to the point where it got purchased?
So this was the years were 2020 to 2023. So it was not too long ago. And it's quite funny because I can answer that question in two ways. Number one, yes, I did hire a fractional leader. Didn't know it at the time, didn't call it that. Staff level engineer who could sort of architect the, so we were building an online poker app, and turns out it is way harder to build an online poker app than I thought. And that anyone that I talked to thought. And so it came a point in our growth where we really needed a seasoned engineer to come in and like really think critically about the architecture and what needs to be like completely gutted and rethought, from scratch. And hired someone for about 20 hours a week. He was working a full-time job, I won't say the company, but a major tech company as an engineering leader. And I brought him in for 20 hours a week. And it was an incredibly productive relationship. And it was amazing. And like, it was a perfect example of leveraging, fractional talent. I just didn't call it at the time. I didn't call it fractional at the time. But even funnier is that the biggest problem, I suppose, with the company was our lack of ability to do marketing. My entire team, I just was engineers plus myself. I did everything that was not engineering, and that included marketing. And I don't have a marketing background, and so the sort of style that I adopted, which I think was to my detriment, was okay. Well, now it's my job to do marketing, and I got to figure out how to do marketing. I signed up for a course, very expensive course, and took a lot of time to like quote unquote like learn the ins and outs of doing marketing. And then I tried to implement. So it's basically like I do my day job during the day, and then I would take this course at night, and then I would try to implement it the next day, or even on the weekends. And it was a disaster. Like nothing I did worked, and I didn't have enough time to really dedicate to learning it and to like getting good at it. And it takes time. Like SEO takes time. Paid ads take time, and also like paid ads also are just like oftentimes not the right approach anyway. I didn't know this, right? So these are all things that I'm learning the hard way, and just like, and I was even thinking of this at the time, but again, didn't connect the dots. If I just brought in a fractional CMO for a few hours a week, just to tell me exactly what to do, I will execute it in this case. Cause I can do a lot of things, like I can execute, but I didn't know what to execute. And that was the big problem. And, I didn't do that. And so what ended up happening is I went into my seed round fundraise, and organic growth was incredible. it was like the best thing about the whole company was like how we just grew organically. But I had a lot of investors asking me like, what are your what are the growth channels that you're intentional about that you can then scale? Because organic growth is great, but and I learned this, it was an interesting learning actually. It's like as an investor, you also want to see non-organic growth, because then that's like an opportunity to invest more money and to turn up the growth levers to get even more growth out of it, right? And I had nothing to show. And it was a real shame. And so that was like a really, like in hindsight, really obvious use case for hiring a fractional marketing leader. And I didn't take the opportunity, and I will not make that mistake again.
I think that's going to hit hard for everyone who listens to this podcast. I, as a fractional CHRO, and I've got friends who are fractional chief data officers, fractional chief financial officers. We're still learning how to market ourselves. Now I have to market a company. That is where it gets just that is just like the perfect example that you just gave. Yeah. Which, imagine how much bigger and better and amazing it could have all been if you just had gotten somebody 10 hours a month to give you perspective and background and experience. That even though you did take that course, and I bet you you've paid off. It's probably paid off at some point, because at least now you have a little bit of a marketer's eye. Mm-hmm. But you took a course that is what probably people take at the beginning of their career, being a marketer. Yeah. And what you needed to catapult your company was somebody who had already catapulted a company like yours. Yeah. That's a great story. And I want to thank you for sharing that, because I think that's going to hit hard for everyone. Wow. So I know we've been chatting a lot. What's one question you wished I would have asked you? I'm going to answer that with another question, the rhetorical question. It's really for the both of us. Okay. I'll try answering it, but I'm actually really curious to hear what you think. So we are both fractional evangelists, right? In our own ways. I spend a lot of time pontificating, if you will, on like the future of work and how fractional fits into that world. Yeah. So the question is, I'm answering your question with the question. If we're right about this movement about fractional work and its place in the future, what are some of the second order effects that happen? Like, let's imagine we're right. It's 10 years in the future. Fractional work is mainstream across the board. Like, what are some of the second order effects that would happen as a result of that? And I'll try answering it. I'll answer first with like at least one potential second order effect, which actually may not be a good thing. Like and so a lot of second order consequences are not necessarily good. So like we're seeing right now in the remote work trend is sort of like had that huge moment during COVID, and now like a lot of companies are doing the whole return to office thing. And I'm now seeing companies that are increasing pay for those that come back to office. Mm. And so now I'm thinking to myself, like, well, let's extend fractional work into the future, right? Fractional work is, I think a lot of employees would think of it as a benefit, like an opportunity. Like I get to do fractional work. We talked earlier about how like we're very intentional about this, and we're happier as a result of, we show up to work happier as a result of it. I mean, I hope this is not the case, but I do wonder, like, is there a world in which like, full-time employees actually get a premium because they are quote unquote full-time versus fractional? I don't know, but you don't need to react to that. But I am curious what you think about like, what are some second order effects of fractional work being mainstream, us being right in 5 to 10 years? What does it look like? That's a great question. And I'm glad you asked and answered your own, but I'd say that, again, somebody who certified compensation professional and somebody who does workforce planning, the money component, that premium, only lasts so long. Mm-hmm. It will fade with time, because the big thing that creates success for organizations is client satisfaction and engagement, which is a direct correlation to employee satisfaction and engagement. Money will make you happy for a while. But what we were talking about, where if I'm fractional and I'm leaning into, like I said, there's 26 different disciplines in human resources. I'd
Yeah.
like to lean into only about 7 of those.
Yeah.
But if I'm a full-time employee, I have to lean into all 26, which
Yeah.
means that the vast majority of the time, I'm not totally happy and engaged.
Yeah.
I can do it. I can knock it out of the park. But if I had a staff of fractional specialists, fractional strategists that are leaning in and staying abreast to what's happening out there when they're not doing my work for my company, I think what we will see is go ahead and give them the premium. Go ahead, and I just saw on the TV, they're putting pool tables and video arcades and speakeasies and stuff back in. We've gone through that in our time. We went through the .com days where, you had the ping pong table and you had the free vending machine. It did work for a while. I'm not saying it didn't. Eventually, though, those generations who are okay to sit there and work and be at that place and even relax move to the next generation, and they have families and they want a different kind of balance. And I think that it's something that we've seen over and over and over again, and nothing like fractional has come into a way of working before. We have tried to find ways to entice employees of organizations to stay and become engaged. I remember days when we didn't have an employee engagement survey. Nobody cared what I said or thought or believed. Now I've got an employee engagement survey. And now people are, obviously listening and doing a few things. It would not surprise me if on the next couple of surveys, people had a question around, how engaged would you be if you were able to do this part-time?
Yeah.
And I wonder what the question's going to be or what the answers are going to be on that, Likert chart of, gee, you mean I could do this part-time and then I could go do it part-time some other way? Or I wonder where we're going to start to see that employee engagement survey go that will give us all more intel into exactly, how much of a movement is this?
Yeah.
But the one thing that I do think is a secondary from this is taking, and I'm going to use this word purposefully, advantage of us who have been doing this forever. We don't want this to just, go 6 feet under in however many years. Please take my brain. Please take my knowledge. I am just here to help the next generation, the next idea become amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us have chosen to be fractionals and are like, but I'm going to hoard my information. That's an employee mentality. That is a scarcity. I don't want to get fired and I don't want to tell anybody what I do mindset.
Yeah.
The fractioners are like, no, take it. Take my knowledge. It's yours to use. And I think that mindset is something that is there for the taking. And companies just need to recognize that it's there for the taking.
Yeah. Totally agree. I mean, I think that was fantastic. And I enjoy this kind of future thinking type stuff and sort of playing things out to their extremes. And you even reminded me of another second order consequence that I think is pretty obvious is more specialization opportunities. Yep. So you're mentioning you want to focus on 7 things, right? And because you're really great at those 7 things, you enjoy those 7 things. And I think that an obvious second order consequence is that there will be more of that across the board, across functions, across people. And I think that's a great thing for everyone. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would say the one thing is, going back to your premium pay, I would like to see whatever that premium amount is of investment into these full-time employees actually being invested into developing the leaders or people who are going to be the ones interacting with that fractional and taking advantage of that knowledge transfer. Because what I've just seen, obviously, we're going to go ahead and say the COVID times, our leaders are not equipped to handle 5 generations in the workforce. I remember the days when we were like, no, we've got 3 generations in the workforce because people had been at their jobs for 30, 40 years. We're now at 5. And these last 2 generations, do not think at all the way that the previous 3 generations have thought.
Yeah.
And just the way that their brain functions.
Yeah.
And we are going to lose the ability as any company, global, local, national, whatever, if we don't start to help our leaders recognize that there are alternative ways to approach things. And that's all about all those wonderful things, the 7 things that I like to lean into, which is the coaching and emotional intelligence and how to plan your workforce properly for 5 generations and all those things. I'd love to see, instead of just giving everybody a 10% bump, finding a way to take that investment money and make it so that people are like, oh, I want a job going up. Because as you said, with the specialists, I'm going to have a specialty and I'm going to be that person. But if I want to be a manager, I've got to be more of a generalist now.
True.
And those people need to know how to manage differently.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I can't thank you enough. I've loved this conversation. This has been fantastic. So how can people get a hold of you, both as a CPO and the website, thefractionaljobs.io?
Sure. So I am Taylor Crane on LinkedIn. That's one easy way to find me. And then Fractional Jobs website is fractionaljobs.io. And then from there, you can find my email address. Also, my email address is just tc@fractionaljobs.io. So contact me any way you like. Well, on whatever platform you like, any method, I'll be there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And for all of our listeners, remember, we are here to help you build your business. Fractional Executives is really just the silver bullet, there's a good one, to help you. And don't look at it as something that is trying to compete against you. We are really here just to support you. So thank you so much for listening to the Fractional Edge podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Fractional Edge. We hope you enjoyed our insightful discussions and feel inspired to unleash your competitive edge.
Remember to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with the latest episodes. You can also connect with our podcast guests to benefit from their expertise and explore collaboration opportunities by visiting our website, thefractionaledge.com. Join us next time as we continue to explore the power of workforce planning and fractional executives in today's competitive business landscape. Until then, take care and keep growing.